Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, classmate. I am Lovely Carolino, a second-year college, taking up a Bachelor of Elementary Education, second year, class 1. I am here to continue the discussion about ways of living in the Spirit. Third is solitude and silence. The context within which prayer is practical. Solitude invites silence. Through silence has to do with the notion of rest of body and mind, in which we become available for Him whose heart is greater than ours. Silence is the way to make solitude a reality, in that it completes and intensifies the whole experience. It is a solitude practice in action, an indispensable discipline in the spiritual life. Sa buhay natin, napakaganda na magkaroon tayo ng time para mag-isa at makapagmuni-muni. Sa pamamagitan ng pag-iisa ay nagkakaroon tayo ng time na kung saan napapaisip tayo at naliliwanagan patungkol sa mga bagay-bagay. Ito ay isang daan upang makapag-relax ang ating katawan at isipan sa mga bagay-bagay na nakapagbibigay sa atin ng kahinaan. Without silence, the spirit will die in us and the creative energy of our life will float away and leave us alone, cold, and tired. There is something life-giving when silence is deliberately factored into our daily experience. First, it provides a much-needed space for us to function a spiritually healthy way for our benefit and others as well. It also makes us quiet and defends our awareness of ourselves and God. You lose the feeling of being driven and you can find that you can be yourself along with other people. Sa pamamagitan ng panalangin ay mas napapalapit ang ating kalooban sa Diyos na kung saan nasasabi natin ang lahat ng ating gustong sabihin at mga nararamdaman. Sa ganitong paraan ay mas nabuboost din ng confidence natin na gawin ang lahat ng gusto natin na may tamang desisyon at paraan. Sa ganitong paraan ay mas nagiging malusog ang ating pag-iisip at ang ating espiritual. Fourth way is the silence and prayer. When you pray, you open yourself to the influence of power which have revealed itself as love. Prayer represents the breath of our life, permeating all aspects of our lives. It is the unceasing recognition that God is wherever we are, always inviting us to come closer and to celebrate the divine gift of being alive. Prayer, first of all, entering into the communion with God and God's people. Through this, we can able to see and proclaim the rightful order of the things, the divine order, and live in the very heart of God. This way, it allows our heart to become tears of God, and the tears of God's children can merge and become tears of hope. Sa ating buhay, napakalaking tulong ang pananalangin. Sabi nga, ang panalangin ay hininga ng buhay. Kung mahal mo ang iyong sarili, manalangin ka sapagkat sa pamamagitan nito ay natutulungan tayo upang mailabas sa mga negatibong bumabagabag sa ating puso. Sa pamamagitan nito, magagawa nating makita at maipahayag ng karapat-dapat na may kauyusan at banal ang mga bagay-bagay at mamuhay sa mismong puso at kalooban ng Diyos. Minsan, tayo ay napapaiyak o napapaluha tuwing nananalangin. Ngunit alam ba natin ang mga luha na iyon ay nagiging representasyon ng pag-asa? Solitude, the place of intimate encounter, the place where a commune with God. It is the primary setting aside time to be alone with God, to feel God's very presence. Our first task in solitude is to simply allow ourselves to become aware of the divine presence, to be still and know that I am God. We come face to face not only to God but with our true self as well. It is precisely the light of God's presence that we can see ourselves for who we are. Ang pag-iisa ay isang lugar na matalik na pagtatagpo, ang lugar kung saan ang pagkikipag-ugnayan sa Diyos. Ito ang pangunahing paglalaan ng oras upang mapag-isa kasama siya, at upang madama mismo ang presensya niya sa ating buhay. Ang una nating gawin sa pag-iisa ay hayaan lamang natin ang ating sarili na magkaroon ng kamalayan sa banal na presensya na manahimik at kilalanin natin siya bilang Diyos. Sa pamamagitan nito ay madadama natin ang kaniyang presensya sa ating buhay at ito ay makakatulong upang mas makilala natin ang ating sarili. According to Henry Nouwen, he calls attention to the fact that the place of solitude is where we discover that being more important than having, that we are worth more than the results of our efforts, that our worth is the same as our usefulness. In God's eyes, we are eternally loved whether we are productive or not. Never is performance the measure of our value and acceptance before God. Nouwen advises that when we enter into the solitude, we can hear these two voices, the voices of the world and the voice of the Lord, pulling us in two contrary directions. But if we keep returning faithfully to the place of solitude, the voice of the Lord will gradually become stronger. We would do well to consciously open up space in our hearts, making ourselves ready to conceive whatever it is God may pour in. Most importantly, it becomes imperative that we develop a heart transparent enough to be able to see God and ourselves through the same lens. Ayon kay Nouwen, sa mata ng Diyos, walang hanggan tayong minamahal, maging productive man tayo o hindi. Hindi kailanman ang pagganap ang sukatan ng ating halaga at pagtanggap sa harap ng Diyos. Payo ni Nouwen, kapag tayo ay pumasok sa pag-iisa o solitude, madalas nating marinig ang dalawang tinig, ang tinig ng mundo at ang tinig ng Diyos. Ang dalawang tinig na ito ang humihila sa atin sa dalawang magkasalungat na direksyon. Ngunit, kung patuloy tayong babalik ng tapat sa lugar ng pag-iisa, unti-unting lalakas ang tinig ng Panginoon sa ating buhay. Mabubuksan ang puwang sa ating puso at ihanda ang ating sarili na tanggapin ang anumang ibuhos o ang kalooban ng Diyos sa ating buhay. Higit sa lahat, kailangan natin magkaroon ng sapat at malinaw na puso upang makita na Diyos ang ating sarili sa tamang direksyon. Inward presence. According to Henry Nouwen, it refers to an inner silence of the heart. He equates his states with the idea of being present at home with oneself. Many of us do not experience the sense of at-homeness that no one speaks about because we are always mindering somewhere else. We are not present to ourselves, and consequently, we are hardly present to our own experience of the moment. Henry Nouwen leads us back to the fundamental discipline of solitude. Once we have committed ourselves to spend time in solitude, we develop an attentiveness to God's voice in us. Solitude is the quiet place of listening, and it is in listening that God becomes present in us. Essentially, when we are present to ourselves, we also become present to God, who is present in us. This is what allows us to see and know God even as we likewise see and know ourselves more deeply. When we combine solitude, silence, and prayer, we are often the best ways to self-knowledge. It is the place of adoration, thanksgiving, and praise. Ayon kay Henry Nouwen, madalas hindi natin nakikilala ang ating sarili sapagkat iba-iba ang ating iniisip. Ngunit kung magkakaroon tayo ng time para na manalangin ng taimtim sa ating Diyos, mas makikilala natin ang sarili at mararanasan natin ang tunay na presensya ng Diyos sa ating buhay. Next is outward presence. Presence in an outward sense can be with two and for the other attentively. Cultivation of this type of presence requires what we learn how to be hospitable or soul host to other people, strangers and non-strangers alike. Being hospitable means the ability to see and listen to others hospitably with generous spaciousness. Such expression of hospitality is a ministry in of itself. This kind of hospitality calls for the creative listening. Listening is an art that must be developed and it needs the full and real presence of people to each other. As beyond doubt, it is one of the highest forms of hospitality. Listening is a way of caring, a way of being hospitable, presence to others whose life intersects with one's own. Nguyen points out that there is also a flip side of receptivity characterized by an ambiguous and articulate sense of presence, which is expressed through confrontation. Confrontation is a form of witness characterized by refusal to hide behind neutrality, but instead a willingness to open up ideas, opinions, and lifestyle clearly and distinctly without ever imposing them on others. A careful balance between the two is in order. Receptivity without confrontation leads to a blunt neutrality that serves nobody. Halimbawa sa outward presence, ang pakikinig ay dapat paunlarin at kailangan nito ng tunay at buong presensya ng tao sa isa't isa o pagdadamayan sa bawat isa ng walang pag-aalinlangan. Ang pakikinig ay isang paraan ng pagmamalasakit natin sa ating kapwa. Nguyen identifies the forms of poverty that are of critical importance to listening and to receiving others freely. The poverty of mind and the poverty of heart. Poverty is the fundamentally spiritual attitude of consciousness receptivity to others without the competing need to always know and be right about everything. Someone who is filled with concepts, opinions, and convictions cannot be a good host. There is no inner space to listen, no openness to discovering the gift of the other. Poverty of heart is a learned capacity to welcome other people's unique and varied experiences as precious gift to receive wholeheartedly. When your heart is filled with prejudices, worries, jealousies, there is a little room for strangers. In a fearful environment, it is easy to keep our hearts open to the wide range of human experiences. Genuine hospitality is, after all, a very inclusive endeavor towards others through our authentic exercise of outward presence. Reflection. Solitude is very important when we pray because it enhances our love for God and man. It helps us to better get in touch with our spirit so that we can connect with His Spirit. Through the solitude and prayer, we can relieve all the problems that we are encountering in our lives and be enlightened regarding the purpose of life. Because through this, we can feel the true presence of our God in our life. That's all about my report about the ways of living in the Spirit. Hope you gain knowledge on my report that you can use on your daily lives and to have a stronger relationship to our God. Thank you for watching and listening. To God be the glory.